Hey guys, Dark Humility here. You can always catch me at twitch.tv/Dark Humility for 6 to 7 days a week of Diablo 2 action, PD2, D2R. We do it all, mostly play hardcore online. And of course, you can check out all of our guides for both PD2 and D2R on YouTube here and at maxroll.gg. Alright, today we have my final PD2 video for Season 6, the improvement change suggestions and ideas for PD2 Season 7 and beyond. Can also call it also a feedback list as well. However, it does include all of the ideas that I have for future seasons for Project Diablo 2. Of course, you guys should all know that, and if you do not know, that Senpai Something and his developer team have done an incredible job in Project Diablo 2, bringing it to this point in Season 6. I would say they can truly be proud of the product they have currently produced, especially with all kinds of things such as the new website, balancing maps in regards to fortification, making it possible for builds with less AoE but higher area of effect, damage spells, but a lot higher damage values to be able to excel at mapping, in addition to high AoE builds as well. Being able to, the website just being so crazy, actually having a solid trading option in Season 6, finally getting that major thing on board, something that like Path of Diablo has had for a long time, which was a apt comparison for the longest time. That with the armory and everything is just really insane. And then of course so many awesome skill changes, such as to the rabies clear speed and things of that nature, and of course the map re-tiering and rebalancing and the slam rebalancing. All the things that have happened in Season 6 and all the work they've put in, of course, into previous seasons. We got to make sure we thank them for all of this and note these insanely positive things that have happened in Season 6, which were all the things that I most enjoyed about playing Season 6. Of course, I also can't forget about one of my very favorite things, which is finally instantly converting whole stacks of flawless gems into perfect gems using a key in the cube. I've been wanting that since Season 1, meticulously creating one perfect gem at a time. For someone who loved charm rolling and crafting and things like that, was very frustrating. But yeah, all kinds of things have definitely come to light in Season 6, and so many more. As a result, of course, for this feedback list, if you remember my video for Season 6, I have reduced the number of suggestions probably by about 2 or more whole pages overall. So that's a net loss of about 2 pages of suggestions, because of how well they addressed all kinds of concerns last time that I personally had, and members of my community and the community at large. But, you know, I've also added a whole bunch of things too, so to have like a net loss of 2 pages after all that is insane. I mean, they said that they weren't doing as much this season, but they still put forth crazy work. Alright, so just to note that these are all improvement change suggestions and ideas that I am behind for Season 7 and beyond. I still hope that the Project Diablo 2 project gets a lot of support and momentum going forward, as it has throughout all the way through Season 6, because it's such an amazing project. I do consider it the best Diablo 2 mod ever made, and I do hope that it continues to take all players into account, just as I do with these suggestions here, and that we try to promote a better project moving forward. Alright, so let's actually get through it. So instead of the normal format of just like going through every item itemized as I've done in the past, which leads to an insanely long video, I'm actually not going to be doing that here today. We're actually going to be just kind of going through the most important things and kind of summarizing what's in this document. I will be linking it below though. I'll also post it on Reddit, probably post it in the Discord as well. So that everyone can see this, and let me know, of course, what you guys think about all of these ideas, if you have ideas of your own, and how you guys think they can improve the game in the future. I try to be balanced. I try to make the most solid list possible of things that aren't a totally different mod, but really try to fit the PD2 approach to Diablo 2, which I feel like is an insanely good one, and what can maybe help augment it and accentuate it further, and of course improve it in the future. So that's my general approach to that. One thing to note is that I do an insane amount of closed beta testing every season in my stream. I do crazy amounts. As you can see here, I have a crazy tier list and even infographic that I have produced this season. It does help to kind of inform some of my thinking about various things. Of course, it could even improve in the future. I do see it, or maybe like thinking about ways to split up the Uber lineup for normal Ubers, Rathma, and Declone, and maybe even other Uber bosses if they arrive in the future, so that the builds that excel at each one are more clear, not just Uber bosses in general. But I do definitely think that this list, this tier list for late game mapping that I produce every season. I even like produced recommendations for Fortify, various rank lists, the ladder starter lineup, and everything else. Definitely helps to somewhat inform my decision making. Of course, we even had an infographic for map immunities, so definitely check this out if you haven't already. That is, of course, noted here. One thing to note is that I do consider A through S the heart of balance, and A plus through S minus on that list is the very heart of the balance. So A through S is kind of balanced. It's like in the balance zone, and A plus S minus is definitely pretty solid balance. As that's like the really solid spot. That's like where the balance is the strongest. But yeah, anyway, let's kind of go over it. So I'm going to go over balance ideas first. I don't have nearly as many balance suggestions as I've had in previous seasons. I definitely think the game is just really balanced in terms of skills more so than ever. But I do have a bunch of small things, and remember, you guys can read this yourself. I'm not going to read and go over every little thing, but I will definitely try to summarize. I definitely think there's a couple of abilities in this game that could still use a rework. On the Assassin, Blades of Ice and Dragonclaw are among those. They just don't really stand out, or maybe not quite as effective as other abilities. And abilities like Mind Blast, which may lack or maybe not be quite as interesting. On the Sorceress, we have Frozen Orb. Maybe being able to be a bit more customizable might feel kind of good. Making Shiver Armor a build. They did something with Inferno this season, trying to make it more useful, but I feel like they need to make it a bit more useful. They need to make that buff persist and actually work, so that negative res debuff for fire seems like it works. And then of course there's Hydra, which still feels kind of weak for mapping. A couple of Druid builds, a couple of Poison Creeper and Raven kind of being insane in the early game. Arctic Blast still not being effective as a negative res debuff, same thing as Inferno. They've definitely put it, they've made it potentially very good, but it doesn't feel very good yet, and I feel like that it's very close to being good, just needs a little bit more tweaks to that. And then a couple of possible nerfs even for the Druid because of how insane the Druid is this season. It's arguable whether or not you'd even put the Druid as #1 in overall class power ranking, as I put here in the overall tier list. I definitely think it's very possible you could. I'd say the 3 most popular builds this season were probably Druid, Barbarian, and Assassin, with Sorceress also being pretty popular. Of course, it being still insanely powerful, but maybe not as popular because of how dominant it is LOD. But at any rate, the Druid, especially with shapeshifting, is kind of insane, so I recommended some small nerfs there and maybe a small buff as well to Fireclaw. Barbarian, just have a couple of small recommendations. Honestly, the Barbarian is really solid. It's hard to find a skill that isn't in a good place. There's even some things I haven't listed here. Some people could argue that Leap Attack could still be slightly more impactful in some way or another. Maybe slightly more AoE, I don't know. But there's a bunch of little small recommendations there for the Necromant, for the Barbarian. Yeah, for the Necromancer, multiple Iron Golems still will never make sense, even though it's possible, and that just requires them having them persist. And I do think that things like certain curses and certain golems could be made more interesting or impactful. And max curse mastery probably should have some extra benefits, especially when group mapping, and to make it to where their curses don't get overridden by a baby mercenary curse. It's definitely something I went through in season 6, and it's still the case. Not a ton though. Once again, a lot of these classes I think are really, really solid at this point. Um, Possibly, it's really insane. But the only thing I think necromancers lack is health on hardcore, but they have other ways of defending themselves. So it's very cool stuff overall. Uh, that's speaking overall, of course. But Amazons, I do feel like there's definitely some skills that could still use some work. We talk about Fend, Exploding Arrow here. Lightning Fury, I feel like could still use a bit of work to get into that, like a bit more into the balanced spot overall. Poison, Plague, Javelin, Fend, same thing, even Immolation Arrow. I think, there's some interesting ideas here for some other things. And I still think the dex scaling for physical bosons would provide that small push to multi-shot and strafe to really make it a build that's actually played consistently again without making them too strong again and increasing the risk-reward strategy. And of course, paladins have ideas for how to improve thorns. I have ideas for how to improve a couple of these skills that aren't used a lot. I think the damage output for foe is slightly over nerfed, but I mean, it could be a little bit stronger for sure. And then, maybe making some skills feel a bit more unique and making like charge and smite actually feel good in more situations. So there's definitely some skills for the paladin and Amazon that could definitely use some help there as well. There are a number of LOD areas that I feel like would be greatly benefited by some changes, some things that are just totally abandoned in LOD areas pretty much when it comes to PD2 farming because of various changes or just the way maps work in general. This is just a change coming over from D2R, making a Arachnid Lair level 85 area. I think this would feel better than like completely eliminating monster popping in Chaos, maybe making only the monsters immediately around you pop from hitting the seal instead of a 7-second limit to not make it broken, but so where items still drop from the monsters around you, because that is a really satisfying feeling finding loot from monsters immediately around you, but maybe not completely remove it. Making Countess more of a farm again. It's a fun farm in normal Diablo 2, and possibly increasing the runes that drop from her normal table could be kind of interesting. Indariel's loot table is not really justifiable despite the insanely high area level of catacombs. And of course, talking about Bale, the Bale area is just hugely avoided, and it's still a major problem when it comes to finding tokens of absolution as well. So maybe some ways to make it more justifiable to farm Bale. And then, of course, my personal idea where I think that personally Normal and Nightmare are kind of just pass through areas on PD2. They're really easy because of P5 drops. And it pretty much makes the game get steamrolled through those areas. Maybe decreasing, maybe making it P1 in the in normal, P3 in nightmare, and then P5 in hell might provide a bit more balance to that progression and more impactfulness feeling of that progression. Alright, so when it comes to maps and dungeons here, I pretty much just talk about maybe making the dungeons more unique. Currently, they all spawn the same monster types, which are just rotated through. There's a couple of monsters that won't spawn in each one, but they'll all spawn to some degree. I think it'd be kind of cool if they all had like different types of dangerous monsters that opened up the types of comps and approaches to completing the dungeons. This is something Senpai has said he's wanted to do, but he hasn't had enough time to, so maybe at some point this will become a thing. definitely they did an insane job balancing maps this season, but there's still some maps that could use some help. Definitely these ones that are kind of listed here maybe could use some help. This one maybe not even so much, maybe a very tiny bit of help. But overall, they're looking pretty good. And then, of course, there's maybe a couple of other small problems with maps as well. And then maybe some ideas to maybe help out and maybe make some of these events even more interesting. The Uber Key map event being so broken that people just event farm for it, and it's crazy lucrative. Seems a little bit exploitative the current way it works. Maybe there just needs to be more events, so that's not as easy to do though. And then, of course, some ideas for maps themselves, and just overall map and map rolling mechanics. And then, of course, Declone, Wrathman, Uber Ancients, and of course, quest items. So I pitched this idea in my last video. This is a pretty big one. Is the idea that I feel like a lot of people just don't do Declone and Wrathman because they don't have to, because they basically get the same reward with little additional investment just by giving their materials to someone that will kill them. There are ways, of course, to make these fights more interesting, or to detach them at least from an Annihilus term by potentially like reintroducing the standard Declone that drops the Annihilus, so most players can get that pretty easily, and then maybe making the rewards for Declone and Wrathva completely unique. And of course, there's a bunch of other things that we mentioned here as well. But yeah, and then of course the idea that like only a few people reap like insane rewards from just killing these bosses over and over, which leads to burnout and things of that nature. So I just discuss a bunch of ways you could potentially balance that out, such as creating 2D clones, you know, an ultimate Diablo which drops a different reward, the community SOJ selling one, or whatever material it is selling one for more community involvement. And then there's the other ideas as well, such as making quest materials bound on accounts. So I just propose a bunch of different solutions here. Of course, the other solution to making that a bit more interesting and dynamic would be to create a solo self-found league. And then, of course, I also talk about ways to making the Declone Wrathma items a bit more accessible, especially on hardcore. You can definitely have like hardcore improved drop rates, but you wouldn't actually need that. Maybe if they were just easier to get, and maybe if there's like item shards people could get, and eventually achieve this by successfully completing dungeons and other things of this nature, which we talk about here. And of course, there's also some other things too, just for like uber balancing types things, like making it to where the number of standard heroes you get is actually based on the number of people in the actual Uber Tristram, not just in the game. And of course, making it to where people actually have to kill Lilith by needing one of each type of organ, just like in LOD, so that people aren't just avoiding that, which kind of seems a bit of a bleh as well. And some other very small things as well, such as improving Uber key drop rates of LOD key bosses, mostly as a response to how easy they are to get in maps. But otherwise, yeah, there's definitely a bunch of things, yeah, like making the Wrathma tomes, because they're not really, you know, making them a normal drop that's ultra rare, like a skeleton key, and then actually keeping the rewards as gear, or like some kind of gear cosmetic. That'd be really cool. So we talk about a bunch of those improvements there. Omrune got nerfed this season. It's probably one of the only changes I really disagreed with. I didn't really think it was necessary, because the only item, or the only type of item that Omrunes would increase the enhanced damage in was weapons. Everywhere else you would need an enhanced damage jewels to get more damage. You would need some type of other jewel. So I didn't really think this is a big issue. However, as a compromise, I have determined that it makes sense to maybe increase them back to 45% enhanced damage. Currently, they're 40%. So 45% enhanced damage in weapons makes sense to me. 40 does not. It's so easy to find 40 ED jewels or near 40 ED jewels that I have no idea why you would put ohm runes in weapons. Like, it's kind of insane considering just how many and how easy I was able to find like countless of these types of jewels. So like you'd pretty much just remove ever putting them in weapons with the current change. I think something that makes a bit more sense is maybe not making them 50% ED, but making them 45. So at least a plain 40% ED jewel isn't just as good, but maybe to where maybe something with that, maybe in a bit of max damage, easily exceeds the ohm rune. So I definitely think there can be a bit of a compromise here to balance it a bit better. I think that this season has been the best season ever when it comes to rune prices. Rune prices are finally starting to normalize, and it's feeling like burrs and sirs don't have as much command over the rune values necessarily. It's feeling like things like Cham, especially, uh, mostly because of the changes to cannot be frozen on slams, but also in addition to some other items that require it. Really are on the up and up. I think that they just need to create maybe a few more rune words or maybe help out some of those rune words with jaws and chams and things like that a bit more. And then I think we'll be at a pretty solid place in terms of people wanting all of the rune currency and it feeling pretty fair. I did used to suggest some other things, but this is in line with the changes they've currently made, and I think they can do that pretty easily. Whereas there's a bunch of rune words that I suggest that maybe they bring back to LOD values because there's no reason that they shouldn't be, considering that they won't make the builds too powerful, but they'll make the rune words more likely to be actually made. Exile just doesn't feel good with Decrepify, and there's a lot of Zealers, including off-Zealer builds, that don't that I feel like suffered quite a bit by losing the amplified damage on Exile. I feel like that's something they can definitely bring back. And of course, Declan and Wrathman, things like that can't even be cursed anyway, so I definitely feel like that's something that would make that really cool, especially when they made it possible to make it in non-paladin bases. Definitely making that much more impactful, and just making a bunch of other rune words slightly more impactful as well. But overall, that is what we got there. When it comes to all these other items here, I would personally, I have no idea. Now, someone in the comments, please tell me if you have an idea why this happened. I'm actually not entirely sure why Lilith's Mirror's functionality has been limited so much to just like rares and blues. Maybe it's to make those rares and blues feel so much more impactful, but the way I saw it is that rares and blues already can have tons of merit in PD2 because of how much they were buffed. They can already compete with uniques and sets and crafts and things like that. And the fact that they could also look cool too was really neat. I'm not exactly sure. I have some theories, about, I don't know, RMT maybe, or I don't have a clue actually. I have no idea. It's possible that they were just they really want to push those rares and blues really hard. I don't really know. I don't necessarily agree with it though. I really liked its functionality in the previous season, and I thought it was more commanding, especially considering its rarity. Like you find something that's that rare, I honestly feel like you should have a lot more freedom with an item like that. But yeah, I don't know. Then of course here I kind of have a laundry list of a whole bunch of items I feel like still could use help or could use help again because maybe they're slightly over nerfed, like Stone Crusher, which was pretty recently. Just some small help to some items to make them more consistently good or actually get used in some remote kind of capacity. Some nice risk reward things with Ondal's Wisdom, getting its unique stat back, the experience. Yeah, just some small things to not make it feel as bad in some cases, getting certain rolls as well and a bunch of items. Definitely like reducing making pure demonic essences a lot more rare maybe again because they're just I ended up with like billions of them and nobody wants them, or at least giving them some other use. A bunch of other interesting stuff as well, but overall you can look through this list if you want. look through every item, and these are the only ones I really feel like absolutely could use something in an absolute sense. There's always other changes that can be made as well. I just don't think they're as necessary or would be making as big of an impact. My cool idea for making like some kind of lay waste store up ability that stores up damage, stores up thorns damage. You know, monsters do damage to themselves. You store it up in a bomb and kind of lay waste to monsters, which is really a cool idea there, which we of course I think mention up there as well on the skill thorns itself. Some small changes to certain stats on certain items, just improving certain item types. Making like Holy Freeze negated with like 2 instances of CBF on the gear. That could actually be kind of interesting. And which I don't think would actually be harmful at all. And some things I've noticed, like some items, just you can't buy all kinds of vendorable items really early in the game anymore because they just cost too much because of certain changes they made to those items. I think that was in like season 4 or season 3. It's definitely something they can still improve in some capacity. Maybe making Act 3 mercenaries more interesting because they can like debuff with their cold and fire abilities, kind of like the static field mercenary can. That'd be kind of neat. Making it to where re-equipping items on a mercenary with multiple auras doesn't lead it to where you can only get 1 aura unless you rejoin the game. I think D2R has already fixed that. I think that might have been fixed a while ago, but yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. Some interesting ideas for shrines, including taking advantage of the fact that you can't clear curses currently by taking a shrine. So why not just create a shrine that can clear curses or yeah, just any kind of curse or status really. Which is kind of neat. It could replace these useless shrines. So there's still actually a couple of useless shrines they could replace, like poison and exploding. They could create this new one, so that's kind of an opportunity they have there. I think that'd be kind of neat, and they've already made like adjustments to shrines in many other ways, so this is definitely something that, like all these changes I propose for the most part, that is pretty consistent, at least I think for the most part. All right, and then of course you have all kinds of different stuff here, like with I loved the changes to slams for the most part this season. I feel like the slams are so much better. One idea for something that they could still do though is separate caster and melee weapons somehow and separate the slams. I think a lot of people think that's possible. Maybe making it possible to recycle bricked items in some way still. And then this one, I'm just echoing the crowd on this one. I'm just I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. Puzzle pieces, there are some people that will use absolutely every puzzle piece because they're constantly crafting, but the vast majority of the player base will not. I think just creating some other functionality, like turning a whole bunch of them into a box, is not a bad idea. And for the people that love to craft, it still has the functionality. That dual functionality, I think, should be enough to make that very interesting in all kinds of ways and capacities. And then, of course, bunch of quality of life things as well. I really don't like useless items or when you end up with way too many of a material like pure demonic essence or puzzle pieces, and I feel like that's like a real problem with a couple of materials, those two in particular. And I feel like they're either just too common or in the puzzle piece case, I don't think they're too common. I think that's nice for people that like to craft, but I think multiple functionality is nice there. And then quality of life things, making full juice stackable, different color backgrounds on an item that is not identified versus one that is not in the charm inventory. This is definitely something that's always been like a pet peeve or just really annoying to me, is the fact that sometimes I'll go to ID a charm, but it's already ID'd. It's just that it's not in the charm inventory, so it's the same color as unidentified charms. I feel like that's something that could be pretty easy to change or fix. definitely definitely wastes a lot of time for sure, here and there. Making some other things in sellable to vendors. They did a really good job of making a whole bunch of things in sellable to vendors, including pretty much every stacked item. But there's definitely some items they could still remove or make them sellable. They can make some other things stackable still. Allow rerolling of amulets, rings, or jewel shapes. People really like that stuff. That'd be something that I think a lot of people would promote. It would be really cool. Some quality of life things like with the DPS counter, max gold, some extra things in the character info sheet. Being able to turn off certain game noises. That's like what D2R can do, but like I don't know if they have that capability there. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Certain auto pickups for solo gameplay that can be enabled when you're not partied. It'd be kind of neat. Definitely improve the mapping experience, especially on a lot of builds that move very quickly. And some other things of that nature. PvP, a couple of basic suggestions here. That's not really too crazy. I don't know of how big of a community P2 has for PvP anyway, but at any rate, definitely some very good opportunities there. So the new trade site came online, and so here I'll take a little bit more time to go through some of the things that I've noticed in Season 6 with the brand new trade site. I do think it's amazing, it's working, it's great, it works pretty darn well. However, I don't think it's quite ready to completely replace even the Discord or anything else until maybe it has some of this stuff. So we're just going to kind of go over a few things that I've definitely noticed that were kind of annoying or otherwise not optimal. So making it possible to view all items in trade lists as an abbreviated list. So currently you can view them with all the stats and everything, and sometimes these boxes for these items are absolutely massive. Some kind of like abbreviated one-line list of every item, some just like itemized list. That'd be really cool to be able to view items like that, including in your own list and other people's lists, just to see what everyone has for trade and to make it just a lot easier. That's currently like what the Discord allows you to be able to do, and it's really good. Currently, as of making this video, true damage range on weapons is not visible. You can see the enhanced damage on the weapon, but not the actual damage range, like 1,000 to 1,100, for instance. It's definitely something that has proven to be annoying when trading weapons, especially. I think the same also goes for the exact defense on armor, but I'm not 100% sure if I remember that right. Maybe not. I know the damage was the annoying one, though. Make new private chat messages always appear on top. Currently, sometimes they appear on bottom, so the appearance of those messages can be a bit annoying. Creating a button that archives all messages in the private chat window. Yeah, it'd be nice not to just have to archive every conversation individually sometimes, especially when you go through a lot of trades. Allowing for a larger trade limit. So this is... I found this particularly annoying, for someone that's, like a content creator especially, and who does as much trading as I do, and who picks up so many items as I do, and slams as many items as I do. 50 is not a very viable trade limit. It didn't feel very good at all. It also apparently prevented you from being able to like exchange services under any circumstances or do any kind of rune exchanges on the site if you had more than 50. And yeah, it was just not good. It didn't feel good at all. It definitely feels like 100 to 150 maybe is much more viable. Even if you're being generous with the quality of the items you're trading, I definitely feel like this definitely was needed. And to not punish you for having that many trades open on the site. Make it possible for other players to view your character's personal stashes and shared stashes and inventories from the armory. So currently you can only see a character's inventory. You can see the in some cases you can see their base gear as well, but you cannot see any of their stashes at all, and that I feel like would be so huge to allow other people to view it as well, because then you don't have to post any kind of trade lists at all. You can just refer people to your armory, and they can check your stashes to see what you have for trade. You can mark like a particular tab is for trade, and then maybe even have that whole tab be capable of being like auto listed or something. Yeah, make it possible to list an entire stash tab. Yeah, I don't know. It's for trade, and even if you can't put prices on them yet, you can at least put them, and you can list the whole thing for trade, and then you can put prices on them afterwards, going through them individually. I think that'd be pretty neat. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe so. It's definitely a possibility though. They can increase trade site chat functionality, like allowing blocks last online indicators. I think that'd be kind of neat if they could do that. Make offers incoming section only include pending offers, not all of your items. Yeah, I've noticed that like if you check your offers section, you should have only the offers you've made and offers people have made on your items, not like all your other items. I've noticed sometimes it just includes everything, which is not optimal when you're looking for offers, and making that easier. And then making it to where every link works even with other people's profiles. It seems like there's just a lot of broken links at the moment still. And allowing trade filtering by item category. This would help a lot when searching for like rare gloves, rares in particular, and crafts and blue items, because you have to search for the individual item base in order to find them. It'd be nice if you could just search for whole categories of an item so that all the rares would come up as well. This would definitely help. Currently, it's really easy to search for like uniques and sets and things of that nature, but not so much things like this. Unless it's like an amulet or a ring, which doesn't have multiple types of that item. Instead of searching for, if you can search for rare gloves instead of having to search for Crusader gauntlets and things like that, it'd be very nice. And there's also a couple of other things as well, some very minor things about like ordering and some stuff like that. But overall, those are the things that I noticed. Let me know if you guys noticed anything else that was annoying, or maybe not the best, but the trade site overall is working really well, and there's definitely some things here that are kind of could be optimized for sure, but those are kind of nice. Then there's a bunch of just bugs. Some of these bugs have existed forever. Some of them might not even be able to be fixed because of the game engine very easily, but hey, they're bugs, they exist. And then I definitely think improving the ladders so it's more like D2R's ladder, where the first, second, and third are always in first, second, and third position based on the order of achieving level 99 on their position on the ladder would be very nice. Creating an additional incentive to achieve major achievements, not just for the top 3, so that everyone feels like they have an achievement they can get. They'll get them some kind of special aura. Heck, they could even give a special aura just for killing Declone or Wrathmel with any character, and then maybe make the top 3 extra special in some way. I really think that would be nice, and it will once again improve more community buy-in, improve the amount of the community, and extend the ladder a bit, extend the amount of people willing to buy into these things, improve the entire community's interest with the game and things like that. There's an idea here for another type of an Uber boss, and some other small random stuff as well, including my personal favorite, which is the solo self-found ladders, which, I don't know if they'll ever happen, but, it's definitely something I and a ton of other people definitely fantasize about happening because of how awesome it would be without affecting the vast majority of the player base. I think it'd be really sick. At any rate, that's pretty much it. That's it. Of course, you can always talk to me about these ideas and other things at twitch.tv/Dark Humility. Let's work to make future seasons and PD2 awesome, season 7 and beyond. This is this edition of the video. Of course, I'll post the link below so you guys can read through everything individually. I hope you guys enjoyed this a lot. Anyway, guys, Dark Humility over and out. See you guys next time. Let's get it.